I don't get upset when a team drops 130 in an NBA game. I don't get upset when a Major League Baseball team wins 21-4. It absolutely doesn't bother me to go out and see a professional light it up.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back. No puts given. Tony Covey, Chris Nickel, Golfs by T, Golfs by C. Tony, quick question. Do you know the only mammal that can't jump? And don't say me. Don't. That's not an appropriate answer.
The Chris Nickel.
No.
Chris Nickel is the right answer.
No, it's not.
Only mammal that can't jump. Define
Yes.
jumping, because you got those aquatic mammals that can't propel
Don't
themselves.
overthink it. Don't overthink
I
it.
don't know.
It's an elephant, Tony. It's
I was going to say that if you'd given me a half a second, I was going to go from
Nope.
platypus to elephant, but there we go.
Nope. Big news in the world of golf this week. We're focusing in on some of the tournaments. As LPGA, right, had a major championship in the first couple rounds. Looked like it was going to be Leona Maguire. That's not how it ended up, Tony. That is not how it ended up. Tournament took place at Baltusrol. Winner, Running Yin. Is that a needle mover for you?
It is not. Okay. It's not. But it's early, right? It's got to be her first major.
She's
can't be
20.
wrong about that.
20.
All right, so, yeah, that would be... Yeah, I mean, this isn't, as LPGA goes, this is not like the most exciting leaderboard ever, but Rose Zhang, she's...
Top 10?
I always like to see Anna Nordquist near the top. So
yeah.
T3 there.
Yeah. Rose Zhang, top 10 in her first professional major. I thought that was pretty significant. And as per usual, there was some commentary around Baltusrol. You know, some people didn't love some of the course setup stuff. I don't know. I thought it was fine. People aren't ever happy. I thought it was fantastic. Moving on to the PGA Tour in what amounts to a home game for Keegan Bradley. And I know, yes, it's not technically like the state he was born in, or like the city.
A regional home game.
I mean, he's been going to the tournament since he was like 10 and whatever. So it's as much of a home game as you're going to have. Again, like
not a lot of major code. Not a lot of, I guess, I don't want to say major as to confuse people, but not a lot of professional PGA level tournaments in Vermont.
Right. And he didn't grow up in Cromwell, Connecticut. So, but to me, two questions for you. One, I mean, yeah, they're setting all sorts of crazy scoring records, etc. Rory McIlroy kind of came out after and said, yeah, this is kind of one of those courses that's been obsoleted now by technology. We're seeing, I mean, the number of 62, 63, 64, rounds, it seemed like everybody was shooting. And I think it was on the third day. I want to say it was on the third day. Yeah, Ricky shot his career low round on the PGA Tour with a 60. So my question is, are low scores like that good for PGA tournament golf?
It's a good mix. It doesn't bother me. It absolutely doesn't bother me to go out and see a professional light it up. I don't get upset when a team drops 130 in an NBA game. I don't get upset when an NFL game is 54-48 or whatever it happens to be. I don't get upset when a Major League Baseball team wins 21-4 or some variant of that with a massively high score. So yeah, I don't care. I mean, at the end of the day, the lowest score wins in golf. It doesn't matter what that low score is. It fundamentally doesn't change anything. So yeah, I don't care.
I think it's interesting to me. People get sometimes bent out of shape a little bit, but in so many other sports, we like offense, right? We want to see offense. And I get it. There are people that appreciate a good pitcher's duel. No problem with that. We're seeing a lot of that in the College World Series to a degree. Games that are 3-2, 4-3, going to extra innings. I think that's fantastically interesting. But for the population at large that watches sports, they want to see activity, right? They want to see results and things, and they want to see scores. Like I said, they want to see offense. And, well, you saw a lot of offense over the weekend with 23 under winning. I mean, it very easily could have been a couple more than that. But you're talking, you need to go shoot 6-7 under a day to kind of be right there. I don't think it's bad for the game. I think, like I said, moderation. I think if every week were like that, I think the downside is people go, oh, then they focus on that one thing, right? Like, oh, okay, now it's just bomb and gouge. And I mean, all the talking points of obsoleting courses and da-da-da.
That is, I mean, the same talking points for, I mean, how many years Lou Stagner always brings the receipts, right? People have been telling the same story forever. It's not new.
Ever.
It's not part of the distance debate in terms of actual reality. So, whatever. People are always going to complain. People are always going to find issues with something. I don't care. Lowest score. Did the lowest score win?
In fact, it did this week, Tony.
Okay.
Still won.
Right. Then I'm fine with it. As long as we're not changing that, right? All right. Not the longest drive, right? That we haven't changed that?
I don't think so. No. In fact, if you want to point to a stat or two, Keegan Bradley, I believe, led the field in strokes gained approach and strokes gained putting. So those two things tend to be pretty important, and he was the winner at the end of the week. Moving on. We're getting questions around the world of golf ball quality and stuff. So first question.
So much stuff.
There's so
always
much stuff.
With the stuff.
It's always with the stuff and the things. What's the context? What are people complaining about or questioning, I guess? And then what are some things that we're seeing that are true regardless of maybe a number or a score or a particular metric? So set the stage for us. What's going on?
Yeah, a lot of it is always how come the 2023 ball didn't score as good as the 2021 ball? A lot of questions like, did you guys change your testing methodologies, et cetera, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what we're hearing a lot of lately. But, it changes. You address one thing, people find another. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, I guess to dig deeper on that just really quickly, what would be a reason, or why might it be reasonable that, let's say, okay, yeah, because I kind of get it in the sense of, okay, if you have a product 2 years old, it tested here, and we've improved things, changed things, people kind of expect an evolution of better, and when something doesn't kind of live up to that, they go, help me understand. So I guess maybe that is the question: is how could you have a ball 2 year, cycle old, whatever, next ball that comes out go down in score, and is that realistic for that to happen?
Yeah, there's a variety of reasons why that can happen. First and foremost, no, we haven't changed anything in our methodology. It's the same tooling, the same everything, the same approach, still ordering balls the same way, sourcing from multiple locations, retailers when possible, spreading orders out, doing all the things we've been doing from the very beginning. So, I think you start with one of the lessons we've learned over time is that golf ball quality is largely a factory-driven metric. It's that's where you start. Is by and large from the factory. So start there,
right,
and then understand that different balls, different compositions, different material makeups, different constructions have different challenges. So as you can imagine, right, it's a little more difficult, a little more complex making a 5-layer ball than it is a 3-layer or a 2-layer, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
More patterns emerge. Yeah. Patterns emerge with that. We also see, you could say, like, we've talked about this before, kind of factory patterns where, and we'll talk specifically, this came out of the MaxFly Tour X ball lab, where the 19 ball wasn't great in our system. 21 ball was really good. 23 ball, not as good. By the
still
number,
really, really good, but
by the number database average in terms of total quality. And we have seen a pattern with Foremost in particular. Foremost is the factory in Taiwan that makes urethane balls for MaxFly, Vice. They make Wilson stuff, Encore. It's a long, long list.
Right.
And I would say from what we've seen, the top overseas independently owned, not directly OEM controlled facility, ball making facility out there right now. But things happen. And we've seen with Foremost the recurring pattern, and we've seen this with a number of models we tested, is one box in our sample, and our box would suggest one production run.
Sure.
Right. It's not just one box. It's everything that came out of that one batch. So one production run where things just got a little weird. And it's hard to say why, but again, it could be, one of the examples that was given to us is, depending on how they mix things. In some places, mixing isn't 100% automated. So, hey, you're dumping a bag of material into the mixer and some of it spills out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you get
that happens.
A slightly different result. Yeah, there's a number of things like that can happen. And so, yeah, like I said, factory level, and then you start to understand that some things are a recurring pattern at a given factory, if you will. So, I mean, lots of reasons, but ultimately, it's a factory thing. And if you kind of look at everything that's come out of Foremost, it's above average, generally speaking. But I would say above average, but every now and then prone to a hiccup. So if you are going to buy a Foremost made ball, just understand that is part of that goes into the proposition, and some defects are more severe than other. And that's the thing. Like when we do see a problem, it's typically, there are one or two exceptions here, but it's typically the case of McFly. One box was a little bit firm. Consequence of that, they're going to be faster. That's cool. Probably going to be a little
just not
longer.
As consistent as maybe the other two.
They're going to be different than most of the others, and they're going to feel really firm, and you may not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're we've gotten some that we've had some in the sample a little bit overweight. Cool. Also, probably a little bit longer for you. USGA frowns on that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we're talking about here.
Yeah. No, and I think that's fair. And obviously there's going to be a lot more ball stuff for us to discuss and talk about in the days and weeks to come as we get set for our large ball performance test, where we actually test the performance of the golf ball, i.e., what ball might be good for you based on certain characteristics. Ball Lab doesn't answer that. Again, Ball Lab is manufacturing consistency. How many times can you make and hit a production spec? Ball test, performance. What does the golf ball actually do? How does it fly? How does it spin? Who might it be good for? Da-da-da-da-da. All of those kind of things. Not today, 2 days ago, best driving irons results. We're going to dig into this. We got a top 5, Tony. Run me through. Top 5 driving irons. I tend to call them utility irons sometimes. I know not everybody does. Shame on me, but
some people call them driving irons. Some companies have explicitly said it's not a driving iron.
Right.
and then, of course, you just have to accommodate the search engines and what people are actually looking for. So, driving iron utility, call it whatever you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter. It's the same damn thing.
Yep. Top 5. Run me through.
Number 5.
TaylorMade
P70 UDI.
P790. Right?
Yes, P790.
Okay.
Numbers matter.
Numbers
P790.
matter. 4th place.
Shrixon ZX Mark II utility. Formerly, that was the one, right? We called it the Zubs, just based on how it how the font's rendered. So Zubs was always a strong performer. No surprise to see Shrixon near the top again.
And in 3rd place.
Guys, surprise of all surprises. I might not even pronounce this right. We try and get one or two kind of smaller, unknown, one-off, whatever you want to call it, brands in here. And so number 3, Kaylee Golf 01X utility.
Let's go with that. Right smack in the middle of the top 5 and 3rd, Kaylee Golf 01X. 2nd place, not new to our testing, not new to people who know about this brand and some of its history. It'll do this every once in a while where it will pop up with an exceptionally strong performing piece of equipment, and did it again. 2nd spot. Who we got?
We have the Sub 70 699 Pro V2. So, yeah, we got a newer one in the mix here.
Mm-hmm. So Sub 70 rocking and rolling again, which is pretty fantastic. And this year, the best driving iron, utility iron, call it what you want.
Yeah, and this was, we'll run it down real quick here, but this was a dominant winner. The only score in the 90s this time around. So huge congratulations to the Ping, not a driving iron, crossover utility. Impressive to say the least here. running
Anything
through the
jump
numbers
out? I mean, when you're kind of looking at there, like you said, ping, it was kind of a landslide in a sense. Like there's some separation between 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5. That jumped out
Yeah,
to
and
me.
if you
Anything
look
else?
too,
Yeah.
right, like the sub 70 kind of got to number 2 by being middle of the pack or better kind of across the board, whereas the ping crossover here, first in accuracy, first for distance, second in forgiveness, and not uncorrelated with the distance, number 1 in ball speed as well. So,
Mm-hmm.
very, very nearly ran the table of our performance categories here. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we know this has kind of been something Ping has been working on for a while, kind of an area of focus, trying to figure out how to make a better long iron replacement.
Right.
And so here you go. Yeah,
And there it is.
good
Yeah.
result for the Ping.
The other thing kind of jumped out to me too, Strixon up there, and the reason I kind of bring that one up is that's often been a kind of on tour favorite. You see a lot of, when guys and gals put in a utility iron, driving iron, again, whatever you want to call it, a lot of times that's a slot that if they are under contract is a place where it's easy to slot in a different club, right? Because most contracts, if they're 10 clubs, 11 clubs, whatever the case is, a lot of times that spot is kind of open. And so you see players, especially now as we're getting towards the Open, British Open, again, whatever you want to call it, try to make everybody happy.
I prefer the Open Championship, but you call it whatever you want.
Hey, yes.
If that's what you're going to get upset about, I don't know.
We can't help you with everything. But, yeah, I mean, I'm going to be interested to see, again, this year, as we see that firm, fast conditions when, obviously don't see a lot of European golf in the U.S.
Not since the continent shifted.
No, not since that happened. It's a good point, I guess. But to see what they're actually bagging. So players that, if they're under contract with TaylorMade, wouldn't be at all surprised to see them slide a TaylorMade UDI in there, right? If they're Ping staffers, wouldn't be surprised at all to see them, toss an eye crossover in there. But the other piece being, okay, some of these players that don't really have anything or that slot taken up, where do they kind of go? Are they going to, like I said, I feel like you see a lot of Strixon out there. I don't have golf data tech numbers in front of me, but would not be at all surprised to see that kind of hold true as well. So anything else, Tony? You feel a
That's
burning
it for now.
desire?
We'll come back and talk
We're gonna
more
come
about
back.
this a little bit. Yeah. Aftershow,
the after party. TaylorMade TP Reserve. I like the name. What is it? And
they
why
might be
now?
small batch. Small batch.
No, it's not. It's Reserve.
Okay.
It's Reserve. What is it?
How do you say small batch without saying
small batch? What is it? Why should I care?
So this is a line, and it is I have the model count in front of me, but a complete line of 100% milled putters from TaylorMade. First time they've done that in more than a decade. We have seen, let's clarify right now before somebody says, no, there were some putters that TaylorMade suggested milled, mentioned the word milled, contained the word milled, however you want to look at it, but those were skim milled faces, so basically standard cast, and then just let's kind of mill the face a little bit and call it a day. These are
So what are the that's a good point of differentiation. Some people probably won't understand. Like a fully milled putter, we're talking taking a block of stainless, like 303 stainless in this case, like it's a chunk. It looks like a brick, right?
It is,
and putting it in a CNC milling machine where basically these tools and things spin around and remove all the material until you're left with a putter, more or less. Is that fair?
It's like sculpting an elephant, right? Where you just take a rock and
chip
away everything that isn't an elephant. Doesn't look like an elephant. So same thing with a putter. Yep. Fully milled.
Whereas skim milled, use that phrase skim milled, where let's say you take a putter that's cast, right, which is a much cheaper process in terms of manufacturing. You take that putter and it's cast, and then maybe you just mill right across the face, and that's it.
Milled.
So Yep. So it has milling marks on the face. So someone might look at it and go, oh, that's a milled putter. Well, not really. I mean,
It's
it
a
is.
slightly milled putter face, which is not
It
the same
is
thing.
a slightly milled putter face. Okay, so these are fully milled TP Reserve, first time in over a decade. Like you said, that we've seen this from TaylorMade. My question always is like, okay, it's the middle of the year. Like typically, and I think Dave noted this in the article too. Like typically, this feels like a January PGA show kind of launch. So, what's your take on that? Why now? End of June, middle of the season? Is it like, hey, we'll have all the attention, like nobody else is releasing stuff, and we can kind of guarantee
I
our
mean, that
100% share of voice right now, that kind of stuff?
it may be part of it, but I think one, I don't want to say it's a new category for TaylorMade, right? They obviously make putters. They've made milled putters in the past, but it's something almost entirely different in a current TaylorMade lineup.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be, hey, this is kind of again, I like the phrase soft spot in the zone. Here's an opportunity to time this where it's not getting any competition from anything else we're trying to do. So there is an opportunity play there for sure. And like you said, kind of have the focus on it. And I think it's also important to point out that the cadence of the industry, the release cadence isn't as rigid as it was even 5 years ago. So
Mm-hmm.
like we know January, the beginning of the year is going to be front loaded. We're going to get to January. We're going to have 50 releases in the span of 20 days, and that's just how it is.
Right.
But we're also seeing companies start to trickle things out year round so that there's always something fresh, always something new in the marketplace. And I think ultimately that's what this is. It isn't necessarily that it is the milled putter, and so we're releasing it now. It's just because this is an opportunity to put something out there. And we've seen TaylorMade do this. We've had a steady supply of TaylorMade releases. The Stealth Bomber utility that was very limited edition sold out in a few minutes. We've had black P790s and black Stealths and that kind of thing. So it's a cadence that it's not quite weekly, but certainly on a monthly basis. TaylorMade, certainly a little bit of Callaway, even if it's just like a new golf ball design or something like that. New Truvis
something
pattern.
new to talk about.
Yeah, just keep it fresh. And so I think that's your timing. But certainly I think TaylorMade, they wouldn't do it if they didn't think there was an opportunity to grow this segment of their business.
Well, and that was my follow-up question is, we know in the retail space, right, everything's compared to a Scotty Cameron, godfather of milled putters, if you will, and people can debate that all they want. But in terms of sales and shares and this kind of thing, like, so why, you mentioned kind of that soft spot, you feel like TaylorMade said, hey, people are looking for this type of a putter, and we feel like we can do something different, maybe bring a fresh look to it, something to kind of play in that space? Or is it like, hey, it's a little bit of a showcase line in the sense of, look at what we can do. We can absolutely, if you want to go up here and you want to talk, just classic milled putter design, clean, looks good, etc. Hey, we can do that now too. And we just want to kind of remind everybody we have the capability to play in that space as well.
Well, it's twofold. One is a reminder. And if you've been golfing for a long time, you may have forgotten about TaylorMade's capabilities to make milled putters, mostly because they haven't done it. But I think a lot of this type of thing where you see TaylorMade moving into a category they haven't played in, likewise Odyssey with the Toulon design doing more of a kind of pedal to the floor effort to make inroads. I think keep in mind, we talked about COVID and we've hammered on this over and over again, and it's absolutely real. You had an entire influx of new golfers, returning golfers, guys that have been away from the game for not 5 years, literal decades. And so what you do is have a significant portion of the golfing population that hasn't been indoctrinated into the Scotty brand. It's not ingrained on their brain that if you want a milled putter, they probably don't even know they need a milled putter. But as they learn
what a milled putter is, or why that might be something,
yeah, it's not like, oh, yes, if you want milled, you have to get Scotty. Or if you don't want Scotty, you have to get Bettinardi. They're just sort of unaware of that narrow mindset. And so this is just a new option for a golfer who is probably, I would say, likely to be more open to additional options than if you want to call us the traditional guys, the guys who were here before COVID and all that. So
speaking of small batch, reserve, limited run, whatever you want to call it, Odyssey Jailbird is kind of back-ish. obviously what happened, right? You got Ricky played really well with it. You got Wyndham Clark winning with it, right? We talked about this last week, and then all of a sudden on eBay, right? And some of these outlets,
God, yeah.
You
What do we
saw
see,
people. You're like,
above $1,000 for?
I got one in the basement. I'm gonna run down there,
10-year-old putter.
dust it off real quick, and put it on there for $1,500 and see if some idiot is, dumb enough to buy it. And sure enough, so Callaway is capitalizing on that, doing a limited run, from what I understand. Of those, we'll see.
I'm looking at the email I got from Callaway here, and it really is. This is, kind of the Wyndham / Ricky build, right? The longer 17-inch Super Stroke grip.
Yeah, it's like 39-inch
380 gram head, 39-inch length. So it's not a complete rehashing of the 10-year-old Jailbird, 10-year-old plus, whatever the actual real number on that is, but I mean, it's and the micro hinge insert. That's the other one, right? So
as opposed to the white hot insert, right?
Yeah. So updated Callaway technology in a putter that just won. Kind of I would describe the approach to getting this out as a rapid retrofit. So took an old design, threw in some new technology, and of course the player specific build, right? The Ricky build, which became the Wyndham build, and now it can be your build for the low price of just $400.
$400.
But hey, no, I think again. Right, we talked
I want to
about
try
this
one.
literally 2 minutes ago, right? Opportunities to put something new in the market, and even if it's not like a major, huge release, just keep brand names on the tip of tongues, something new to look at. And so there's your proof. Jailbreak,
love it,
cool,
love it.
The original, Jailbird, not Jailbreak. I can't even keep my Callaway's technology.
We got birds,
straight.
Breaks, birds.
The bird broke anyway.
Are your running shoes on, Tony? Because it's time. Speed golf, let's get it. Here we go. 5 minutes, real quick. Puma went all in on a collab. In the Rough collaboration. Basketball, golf, synergy. Love it or leave it.
Love it. Why not? I mean, we know that crossover exists. Steph Curry, right? Big golfer. Andre Iguodala, if you want to go back a little bit. Huge golfer. And not just physically a large golfer, but also likes to play a lot of golf.
Big into it.
I mean, there is a natural crossover there. Athletes doing athletic things. I mean, so you can look at it any number of ways, and I think kind of cool style with this, like a leopard
Michael
print.
Jordan has kind of dabbled in the golf space.
Jordan dabbles. He dabbles with Barkley. I could do without the shoes, but on the golf course. But hey, that's whatever.
First reaction, Tony. LA golf balls, $70 a dozen. What was your first reaction? I'll take it. And you can fill in the blanks however you like. Shout out to the crew over at Bettinardi. Sam Bettinardi, Bob Bettinardi, father being Bob, son being Sam. 25 years in business. Celebrating 25 years in business this year. That's a big deal or small deal to you, Tony?
That's a big deal, I think. Doesn't necessarily affect the world of golf, but 25 years is a long time to stick around and build a legacy and ultimately take a small putter business and turn it into what now is kind of really a
sustainable.
Not quite there yet, but it will be a generational family business, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I say thumbs up. Great job. A lot of golf companies have failed in 25 years, right? We could go through a list. Bettinardi, not one of them.
I can think of one that's failed like 3 times since I've been covering. So
which is also fair. Saw a post on Out of Bounds stakes, the white stakes, the bane of many golfers' existence. If you play serious tournament golf, you know how crushing stroke and distance penalty can be. Is that a rule we should change? Just make everything a lateral drop?
It's stupid, but I'm gonna say it's stupid. But you have to introduce. Like I see, like what is the purpose of white stakes in my mind? And I'm sure somebody's going to go back and find the rule book and explain exactly why they exist. But
they will.
In modern times, it's really simply to prevent you from playing a ball that isn't on the golf course property or in some sort
out of bounds.
Yes, the actual bounds of the facility. And so, hey, that's fine and dandy, but it is, from a penalty standpoint, it seems overly harsh and unnecessary, and it's a pace of play thing. And I mean, anybody who plays Sunday mornings with a friend, Saturday mornings, even, sometimes casual leagues, it's not a rule everybody follows because, oh, I didn't
No,
know that was out of bounds. Let me go back to the tee. No, I'm
no.
just going to drop it. Maybe I'll play the two-stroke from the fairway rule, or maybe I'm just going to count it as a one-stroke penalty because logically that's all it should be. So my solution
What's your
for those
solution?
situations where you need white to define the actual bounds of the course, make it like a barber pole, red and white stripe. So hazard, not quite a hazard. You can't play it from that location, but you take a drop just like red stakes. So that'd be the subtle difference. You can't play out of it like you can. You don't have that option like you would red stakes.
You have it's like an
Mandatory
environmentally
drop.
sensitive area, like the ESA.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, mandatory drop, but come on. Let's update that rule.
It's too penal. I agree. Could the industry use a shaft lab similar to what we've done with ball lab?
I think, it doesn't scale as well, unfortunately, but the short answer is yes. If we could, get a sample of 3 dozen, I think you would find some, whether it's shafts or driver heads, even, not a question you asked, but anything like that where you started really looking at quality comparisons. I guarantee you we would find the same thing with shafts, the same thing with heads that we have found with balls, and you would pretty
Mm-hmm.
quickly be able to identify which factories are really good at being consistent and which guys are, maybe drinking at lunch.
And on that note, Tony, don't forget the only mammal that can't jump is
It's an elephant.
it's an elephant. And that is our show for today. People stick around.
Really
Also by
playing
T,
fast
also by
and loose
C.
with jump.
Well, jump. Chris and Tony, we're sticking around for the after show. You stick around as well. We're going to dive into more utility iron stuff, driving iron stuff. We'll be right back. And just like that, we're back. It's the after show where we go a little deeper, a little more technical, maybe, on a topic or two. This topic, the who, what, where, when, why of utility irons. I know we said it's utility, it's driving irons, it's confusing to some. So let's start with that. What is a utility iron?
I think
Because shouldn't all irons have utility to them?
you would hope. I think the simplest way to describe it is it's a big bodied iron in almost every case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever your iron is, a utility iron is just going to be like a little bit bigger version of that as a starting point anyway.
So in the club equipment kind of ecosystem, maybe a step closer or in between, like a traditional long iron and a hybrid. Is that fair? Like kind of in that space, maybe. I mean, when we talk about the size of the club, and we'll get to who it's for and that kind of stuff, but to me, it's kind of a lot of like they might borrow from kind of hybrid construction with some of the materials and face technologies and some of those things, but it decidedly looks like an iron. It is an iron, right? It's an iron profile. It's a big iron, but it's an iron profile.
Yeah, I think right. You can kind of think of a hybrid as kind of an amalgamation of a traditional iron and a fairway wood, and then kind of narrowing and moving, I guess, closer to the iron category. A utility slash modern driving iron has become sort of this amalgamation of a hybrid and an iron,
Mm-hmm.
a standard
Well,
traditional
and
iron.
and it's interesting you bring that up because you said kind of this modern version of it. What is the modern like? Driving irons weren't necessarily a thing the way that they're a thing now. So how did we get here? Where it's its own category, where we have enough product to get from multiple manufacturers and actually rank and sort, and that wasn't the case before.
Yeah, and even it's certainly, I don't want to say it's exploded, um, but it's become a more significant collection of options in relatively recent years, and I think part of that tour use, like you mentioned earlier, the Open Championship is coming up, and so I guarantee you, I don't know it for a fact, but I would wager I could go into a Vegas casino and put a lot of money down on somebody releases a utility iron the week of the Open. Put me down for that every time.
Right.
And then when we talk about why you would want a utility iron, that fits right into that story. But I think one sort of that that niche use on tour, and the niche has expanded. So we're seeing more of them. It is for some a situational club, for others it's in the bag every week. And you've seen it rise in popularity among average recreational, whatever you want to call us, golfers. One, in part to fitting, or because of fitting and the understanding, like as we mentioned last week, there comes a point in time where you can't get, for some, you can't get the ball speed you need out of your set iron, and so you need an alternative.
Right.
And for a long time, the alternatives were fairway wood or hybrid, and we know some people absolutely just hate hybrids. They don't they worry about the hook. They don't like the way they fly. And if you feel like what would be my 4-iron or my 3-iron, if I don't like the flight I'm getting out of a hybrid because I feel like it launches too high, flies too high, that sort of thing, you're definitely not going to like a fairway wood as an alternative to that. And so it is kind of a fills that need or that want for somebody looking for more iron-like performance, trajectory, and of course just that footprint, right? The idea that, hey, this looks like an iron and some people just like the way irons look, that sort of thing. So it's like anything else, right? An opportunity to slide a different type of product into the mix. And I don't want to say it's caught on, because we know from our surveys that it's still a relatively small percentage,
not mainline.
but it's growing.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned two different parts there. You mentioned kind of a situational reason and a player reason. So in terms of when somebody might want or have a utility iron, driving iron in their bag. So let's start with that player type first. So people that might routinely have one, I guess I kind of think about clubs, right? You got 14 slots in your bag. That's your starting lineup. Some people have a starting lineup of 14 and that's it. Those are their 14 clubs and that's everything they have. Some people have 15, 16, 17 clubs and swap some in and out on different occasions or different reasons. But that player that maybe is like, hey, utility iron is part of that starting lineup. Who is that player? Probably, maybe what's kind of their, player profile characteristics. Who is that person that might have that club as part of their 14?
It tends to be a stronger or faster player for sure, who doesn't necessarily need help getting the ball in the air, because a utility isn't going to launch as high as a hybrid. It's not going to launch as high as a fairway wood. It's not going to do those things. It's going to produce that flat trajectory. It's, maybe a guy who plays in drier conditions, and for all intents and purposes, there are guys who just like them better. And as we talked about, there are situations where fitting is kind of what drives you there. So there are any number of reasons, any number of player types, but I think if you're going to kind of try and sum it up into one big bucket, it's going to be a stronger, faster player. You don't see a lot of utilities designed for slow swing speed players.
No, especially because we're probably talking about that slot in the bag that is maybe past a fairway wood. So let's say you got a 3 wood that's 13, 15, 16 degrees maybe. And this is kind of in that space, maybe that 18 degree to 22 degree kind of range, a typical 2, 3, or 4 iron, maybe kind of space. So we're not talking about a 7 iron or an 8 iron, right? Just to be clear, right? These aren't clubs that already have a significant amount of loft on them so that's going to kind of take over. We're talking a place in the bag where the player has to generate enough speed to get utility out of the utility iron. And so, yeah, these are probably golfers that are, north of 110, I would think, driver swing speed, maybe even higher than that.
I think probably some guys are in the high 90s, low 100s, but I mean, it's definitely, I can't imagine you see a lot of 80, 85 mile an hour, even 90 mile an hour guys carry utilities, unless it is that situation where they just feel like they can't hit anything else. And that happens, but certainly not the wheelhouse.
No, like I said, there's player preference, but there's also situational golf. We talked about this a little bit, British Open coming up, etc. Why might somebody want a utility iron for a situation or a course condition? And what would that condition be where that might be advantageous?
So I have this this mindset theory, this thing I'm working on putting into practice. It's called two in the trunk. And
Okay.
well, I guess that could bring us back to the elephant. It also sounds like something completely different from what I mean. So let's just be clear. But
Right.
the idea is to have kind of like you said, that your stock, your starting lineup, and then for me, I like the idea of having two more in the trunk. And I'm not advocating for storing clubs in your trunk. It's a metaphor,
Right.
regardless of
Starting
what you want
lineup.
it. Yeah,
I
two
get
in the
it.
trunk, whatever
I get
you.
it.
Yeah. So anyway, but the idea is one of those for me, right, is a higher bounce lob wedge alternative to my tee grind for when
Yep.
the course gets soft.
Yep.
And on the other end of the bag, into that transitional zone you described, is a utility as an alternative to either a hybrid or, in my case, the 7-wood. And the
Okay.
reason I would do that is, and largely for me, environmental. And this is kind of why we talk about it around when the Open Championship rolls around. So if you're playing a high lofted fairway wood like I am, and
Mm-hmm.
you take it into Bandon Dunes, for example, and the wind is blowing, it's a bad situation.
Right.
You may, in some circumstances, hit the ball just beautifully,
Backwards.
absolute dead nut center, and have it land behind you. That's the
Right.
kind of wind you can encounter. So, when wind is a factor, as it often is in Open Championship venues, it may make sense to play something that flies lower and stays to an extent under the wind. Firm
Yep.
fairways when you're going to benefit from more roll. That's another case where the utility iron is perhaps a better choice. And again, exactly why we tend to see them when we go over to the Open, and by and large, or at least often, play a lot of true links golf, where
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the expectation. Almost, fair to say, how the course was designed to be played. So
Right.
horses for courses, that's certainly one aspect of why you would consider it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to simplify it even further, maybe it's an oversimplification, but are you playing the game in the air or along the ground,
There you
right?
go.
And depending on the course condition, setup, etc., weather, right? The more that you are playing the game along the ground, where it's hit, just keep it low, let it run, and you're playing the game along the ground, as opposed to most American courses, right? Most of what we see in the U.S., or at least a fair bit of it, is games played in the air. And so it's high launch, right? Acceptable spin, maximize carry, etc. It's not a lot of land it short, let it bounce on, and that type of an approach. But shocking, golf is played differently on different courses all throughout the world and may require different equipment to optimize for those conditions. Shocking, but true.
Mind blown.
Mind
Absolutely.
blown. All right, so people are going to ask, well, what's the difference? So just very quickly, if I utility versus your standard fairway wood. So you mentioned you play 7-wood. A lot of people play 7-woods. More people should play 7-woods than already do, but that's kind of the 4-iron slot, if you will, in your bag. So compare a utility iron to your 7-wood.
So 7-wood is going to fly a lot higher. Like 7-wood's almost perhaps as close to an absolute opposite of utility iron as you can get, right? They are designed to launch super high, fly high, for the game to be played in the air. So 7-wood's going to be a lot higher, as the utility is going to fly lower. It's going to run more when it lands. If you want to use the phrase workable, I know that's why people like irons. The utility is going to be more workable, meaning it's going to be a little easier, maybe for some a lot easier, to shape shots, control trajectory. So both left,
Yep.
right, up, and down. You're going to get enhanced trajectory control, let's call it that, with a
Okay,
utility iron.
that's a
And the
marketing
trade-off
term.
for that, right? We talked about this. Workable almost invariably means less or
forgiving.
unforgiving, and that's the utility is certainly not going to be as generous with your misses as a higher lofted fairway wood will be.
Mm-hmm. So taking a different step, because some people are going to say, "Oh, I got a 3 hybrid, 4 hybrid, 5 hybrid." What am I going to get if I swap out a utility iron, or I swap in the utility iron and take out a hybrid?
It's almost the same story, really. I mean, the hybrid is not going to fly as high as a fairway would, but
But
it's going to fly higher than a utility. It's not going to be, it'll be more workable than a fairway wood, but not as workable as a utility. It's more forgiving than a utility, the hybrid, but not as forgiving as a fairway would.
Right.
And the other kind of piece that a consideration, and obviously this is all part of the fitting equation and the build and things like that, but you typically at the same or nearly the same lofts, you're typically going to find longer shafts with a fairway wood, and then kind of progressively move your way down to the utility being probably the shortest of the three. Not by much compared to a hybrid,
Yeah.
but generally speaking, a little bit less. And that again, you have to differentiate between forgiveness and straightness. Again, so if you want to hit the ball straight, that's why you see utilities come out on tight driving holes from time to time. I think some people maybe rely on them too much based on Stagner and Fawcett math and what we've learned there. But again, if you're like, I absolutely positively have to get this ball in play, utility, better choice than a driver. For some, better than a fairway wood. You're going to get mixed numbers by handicap when you start looking at hybrids and Arcos data and things like that. But it can be the better choice too when you just like, hey, I got to put this between the lines. Everything else is sort of inconsequential after that.
Yeah, and something people probably or maybe aren't considering too is you got to think about, we've talked about, okay, off the tee, like I said, flighting it down along the ground. Obviously, if you have a perfect lie in the fairway, we're going to see kind of similar differences, but we don't hit it in the fairway all the time, Tony. I know I don't. I know you don't. Plenty of people don't. So to me, that would be a consideration too, is what is it like at your course where you're going if you're not on the fairway? What type of rough situation are we dealing with? Are we dealing with, like the heather of death, like McGregor, where good luck? You're just taking a wedge and probably chopping it out. Or is it something like my home course where the first kind of set of graduated rough is a couple, 3-4 inches thick, and it is dense and it is grass. And it's like, man, hybrid fairway wood are so much easier to hit out of that kind of situation than any type of iron, right?
Yeah, ideally you avoid the rough, but we know that's not how the game is played. Yeah, and so it is dependent on not only what the player is necessarily looking for. Again, right? I want to be a 7-wood guy. I tend to be a 7-wood guy, but also course conditions. And like you said, what am I going to get when I miss? That's one aspect of it. What is the weather going to be? That's another. So there are a lot of factors to consider, but strictly speaking, it's sort of a bigger, faster long iron that's not quite as big and fast as a hybrid. And onward we go from there.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's probably, like you said, it's a rotational club. My guess is for most people, it's not one of the starting 14. Most golfers will probably be better served by a fairway wood or hybrid in that spot, but there's certainly a segment that aren't, right? Like I said, there are certain segment that are very, very fast players. That is absolutely something they need. In fact, there's some players that are so fast where it's like they go right from, driver to like a 16 or 17 degree fairway wood because a 13, 15 degree go too far. It's too close to their driver. So if you're one of those players where you're kind of skipping a club, then having something in there, you effectively kind of give yourself a 15th club because you kind of have the other gap covered. So who knows?
And it's worth pointing out too, within the space, it's not much different from the iron market as a whole. Within the utility space, you have more compact blade-like irons or utilities, and you have larger, more forgiving options. So even if you decide you are a utility guy, there is a scale where you can still sort of sacrifice a little workability for more forgiveness and things like that. So you've got options even within the option, so to speak.
Yeah, they're not all the same, just as all fairway woods run a continuum, hybrids run a continuum, right? Some fairway woods are really big and, really meant more as a tee replacement. Some are small, tour size and more workable, etc. And we see the same thing with hybrids, right? Some are meant to more mimic an iron type of situation, whereas some are so large that they kind of start to infringe on fairway wood territory, right? So same thing with utility irons. Not all of them are exactly the same. Some are a little more forgiving. Others are a little more workable. There's a
A
continuum.
little more ugly. A little more
ugly.
easy to look at.
Yep. But do you have one? You have one that you go to that you swap in and out?
I don't. I'm still, like I said, I know I need one, and I don't have any immediate plans to go back to Bandon Dunes. I would love to go back. And the lesson I learned from the first time is do not bring a 5-wood.
No need.
Even if it's just not. The long fairway wood. It's good to have in the bag as an off the tee option, or when you really need to try and juice something. But the 5-wood just went up in the end. This was before I even carried a 7-wood. I wouldn't dream of bringing a 7-wood. I don't know that you could control it at all.
A pitching wedge.
So that's a case where I know at some point I need something for windy days, and in the case of like a Bandon Dunes or an Open Championship, what's likely to be, or as I ran into in Scottsdale of all places, excessively windy days. It's good to have the alternatives, right? To have those couple of clubs in the trunk to pull from.
Yeah, I'm excited to test some of them out. I think I have an MP Fly High, a Mizuno one from maybe a couple of years ago, but nothing that I've really like tested seriously and tried this versus that, or really tried.
You got fit into one, didn't you?
Mm-hmm.
Or did you go actually get a utility, or just step down to a T2?
So with Titleist you're talking, I did. Yeah. I stepped down to the T200, and then a hybrid after that, in kind of that 4-iron-ish space. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the category. Intrigued to see what it could do and kind of how it might work. And like you said, 2 in the trunk. You never know what you're going to need, Tony. Right?
There you go.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. Find us, follow us on the interwebs, Golf by T, Golf by C. Until next time, we out.